Are you guys ready? Okay, this is Paul Brown, AC5S. All right, thank you. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I've heard a fair amount about your organization from Greg, so it's good to finally come down and see everybody. And Stephen, I feel your pain. We have 3 nets every week, and we try to fill the net control spots as well. And we're now doing it online, and it's helping out a little bit. But 3 nets a week, it takes a lot of people to do that. So good luck on that, and I would suggest all of you guys step up and try it out. I'm probably the worst net controller in the club. I don't stay on script, and I get told about it a lot. But anyway, but I still do it because it's kind of fun to do it. And I have a little trouble hearing, so Run the Net helps me actually because I write it down. You know, I don't do it on the computer. I hear it and I write it, and over time it's improved my ability to hear call signs. So anyway, just a quick note on that. So anyway, this presentation is going to cover a couple different things. We're going to start out and talk about buying HF radios. Okay, how many of you are into the HF spectrum? Okay, so if you own an HF radio, you probably at some point are going to upgrade it. Every ham upgrades a radio, right? Or maybe you want to sell your radio to upgrade, or maybe whatever the case is. So we're going to talk a little bit about HF radios. All right, but then we're also going to talk about specifically how you buy and sell them. So a couple different things going on here. I have bought and sold about 500 HF radios since 2005. Okay, and I don't do it quite as much anymore. It's kind of takes a lot of time, but what the gentleman said here, what Larry said and Greg said is true. I go to Dayton Hamvention, which is now in Xenia, every year, and I just thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I could do something that could help me pay my way, right? So I started dabbling into all different types of amateur gear, and you can buy and sell anything online now, right? You can transceivers, handheld, QRP, VHF, UHF, antenna tuners, analyzers, antennas, power supplies. And I started out this way, buying and selling a little bit of everything. And I found out real quickly that it takes just as much time to make $200 as it does to make $5. Is that the best way to describe it? So I very quickly, after I started the little resale business, decided I wasn't going to buy handhelds and power supplies and antennas and things like that anymore, and I just focused on HF radios. There's better margin, and I like HF radios, and I always test everything that I buy. So I've kind of become a little bit of an expert on HF radios because I play with everything that I buy, and I look at the features, what works, what doesn't work, and that type of thing. But this is how I started. And so I might have sold you an antenna tuner way back in the day. I don't know if I did, but I might have sold you a handheld. But anyway, I moved on from that just to sell HF radios. Now, I classify HF radios really in 2 categories, which is maybe a little oversimplified, but if the radio's been manufactured in the last 10 to 15 years, and there's some gray area there, okay, so it's not like exactly 15 years, but 10 to 15 years or newer is what I deal in. I don't deal in older radios, and there's a good reason for that, and we'll talk about that, okay? And then older than 15 years, and I will tell you, I have bought some Kenwood 830s and 520s and various things, but it's not what I do. It's not my specialty, and it has to be really, really nice museum type quality. And even then, I don't really want to deal in those. And there's usually a reason why that's the case. So we're going to jump right into it here. And if you're looking to buy an HF rig or you're wanting to upgrade, there's a lot of lot of bargains out there on newer radios, right? There just really is. I think the ICOM 7300 kind of shook up the whole market, and rigs that were selling in the $1,000 range used started selling for 500 and 600, and so there's a lot of things out there that you can buy in this 15 years or newer. I like this category because these radios, basically, most of them have digital signal processing, which I think is very important. Really good receiver designs. They really are absolutely good. All solid state. You don't have to worry about tubes and tuning things like that. You can still get the accessories for these radios from all the major dealers. So if you wanted to buy a maybe a board that goes into a radio that was built 10 years ago, you can probably still get most of this stuff from Gigaparts or HRO. You can certainly get mics and manuals and schematics, so I think that's really important. Most all the newer radios cover HF and 6 meters, right? A lot of the older radios didn't cover 6 meters. And I think this is super important. A lot of your newer radios have USB connections, right? So if you want to interface to your computer for digital operation, it's much easier on an ICOM 7100 than it is a Kenwood 520. But so I always look for radios that have USB connections. Also, on your newer radios, they're almost always going to be serviced by the big three. If you have an FT450 AT, which was an early version of their 450 rig, they'll still service it. Okay, not that aftermarket third-party service companies are not good, but if you do want to send it back to the manufacturer, you can do that with the newer radios. You don't have to worry about them saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't work on that anymore." And again, most all of your newer radios have data ports and for remote control and amp keying and that type of thing. You don't always find that necessarily in all the older radios. But the main reason I focus on these newer radios is because they're just great values. I mean, for $450 to around $1,200, you can buy fantastic rigs that do absolutely everything. I bought a ICOM 7600 here about a month ago for $1,000, and that 7600 is an absolutely outstanding radio, and for $1,000 it's a steal. Sold it for like $1,400. But you can find really good deals now on later model radios that you probably couldn't before the 7300 came out. That just kind of changed the whole market. Okay, so we're going to dive right into it. I think for used HF radios, these are all great options. Really good options. Any of the 450, FT450 series, the FTDX 1200s and 3000s, the FT891. Does anybody own F891? Mobile HF rig? Fantastic receiver. It's an unbelievable receiver. Yaesu 991, 991A, ICOM 7100. Does anybody own a 7100?
Got two of them.
Yeah, I wish I had to, right? D-Star, UHF, VHF, HF, 6 meters, for what, $800 new? 100-watt radio? I mean, it's a fantastic bargain and used in the 550 to 600 range. ICOM 7200s weren't around a long time, but pretty nice radios for field use. ICOM 7300s are starting to come in under 800 now, 750 to 800 used. ICOM 7410, that's basically a 7600 receiver, and these are starting to get into the lower 1,000, 900, 800 maybe range. Kenwood 590S, 590SG, Kenwood 480 SAT. So these are all great options. Now, there's some other good options out there. I don't usually buy Flex radios, and I usually don't buy Elecraft radios, but I think the Flex 3000 and the 6300 are affordable, and I can make some money on them, but they're decent radios. ICOM 7600, 7610, ICOM 703. Does anybody have a 703? It's a QRP rig. It's kind of old, probably falls out of my probably closer to 15 years old, right? Maybe even a little older, but great, great radio. Kenwood TS2000 had some issues, but for the most part, nice radio. Yaesu 817s are just rock solid workhorses horses for QRP. And the ICOM 7000. Does anyone own any of these radios? Excellent.
7,000 is still my go-to.
Yeah, great radio, right? I buy all I can get. I can sell them well, and for someone wanting to buy one as a primary radio, first class. Someone wants to buy one as a backup radio, good to go, right? They're great radios. Okay, now let's talk about some radios that I would not recommend buying. Now, if you own one of these, you know, what can I say? We'll talk about them here just for a little bit. Now, I am buying to resell, but if you're buying and you're going to upgrade in a couple years, you're going to sell that radio, right? So everything I'm talking about here probably applies to you. And if you want to buy another radio, then some of the stuff we're going to talk about later probably applies to you. Okay, I do not recommend any of the ICOM 756 radios. The displays are not available anymore. They are not serviceable. And they're cheap, but the display will fail. It's not a matter of it will fail. So I don't buy 756 Pros or 1, 2s, or 3s. 706s, I'm just seeing a lot of failures in those radios now. They're just kind of getting long in the tooth. They're great radios, and they've been around a long time, but it's not something I would recommend for a new ham. No, I'd steer away from that. Anything that has the name Elecraft on it. Okay, so do I think Elecraft is a bad radio? I do not. It's a fantastic radio. But the problem with buying an Elecraft is if you're going to buy it and keep it, then I think that you're good to go. I don't have a problem with that. But people want so much darn money for these things used that it just almost doesn't make sense to buy a used Elecraft. You just should buy a new one, right? And they don't negotiate very well. If you own an Elecraft, people don't negotiate very well. I can't buy them and resell them and make any money. And if you buy an Elecraft, it better be something that you want to keep, because if you turn around in a couple years and want to sell it, you know, they just came out with a new model. So I don't know. We'll see in the future if Elecraft is on my buy list, but right now it's not on my buy list. The Kenwood 570s. Great radios. Oh, I skipped the 897, 857. Same thing. People just ask way too much money for those used. I'm not convinced they have all that great receivers in the first place, but people are still asking $750 for 897s, and quite frankly, for $750, there are much better radios out on the market, like a 7100. Much better radios. So these are kind of long in the tooth. Kenwood 570s. Display issues on a lot of them. Displays are not available anymore. Anything with the name Alinco on it. Well, it's not that I met the owners of Alinco actually a few years ago. Alinco is just a very value. It's a value radio, right? You buy it pretty cheap. I can buy Alinco HF radios all day long for $250. And they're 100 watt. I don't know they do 6 meters, but they're full HF radios. But there's no margin for me on them because I can't sell them. Nobody wants an Alinco. So I don't buy them to resell them. If you want to buy one for field day or for your camping trips or whatever, yeah, they're fine. I mean, they have a pretty low failure rate. And but if you want to turn around and sell it in a couple of years to upgrade to that 7100 or that Flex 6400 or whatever, you're not going to get much out of it. You're just not going to. Worst radio Yaesu ever made in the history of the world, FT100. There isn't one on. There isn't one. Well, is there one still working?
I have a D model that's still working.
Good, and it will probably continue to work. And some people have very good success with them, but there are a lot of issues with the FT100. I've had the option to buy several recently for $100, and I passed on them. It's just not. They have lots of issues. I don't recommend any HF radio made in China. These newer HF radios are coming out, some of the QRP rigs and this and that. If they work, they work. But if they don't, where do you get them fixed? Nobody wants to fix them. So I just don't deal in Chinese HF radios. And you know, you can your mileage may vary. Kit radios. when you buy a kit radio and build it, usually you're going to sell it for less than what you paid for it, right? Nobody appreciates your work. It's that simple. Who builds kit radios in here? QRP rigs, whatever. Yeah. Nobody appreciates your work. They just don't. And so, you know, if you buy a kit for $250, you're probably going to end up selling for $175. Well, that's fine. That's not a big thing, and it's not a big difference. But just, I can't buy them and resell them. And if you buy one and you build it and you think, man, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, every ham's going to want this at the Ham Fest,
No.
not going to happen. They're not going to buy it from you. And then most flex radios. They kind of fall in the same category as Elecraft, right? They just are really, really overpriced on the used market. Really, really overpriced. I have a Flex 6400 I bought used, but you know, I think I got a pretty decent deal on it, but not a great deal. I don't think you're going to get a great deal on a Flex radio. That's just my opinion. If you do, let me know. Let me know if they have us another one, and I'll pick it up. But I think that at some point, the problem with Flex is, in my mind, is that every 2 or 3 years they just kind of scrap their old model and they build the new ones, and they do that and they do it again, they do it again. And so I don't know what the future of Flex is, but I'm not sure it's a good buy unless you want to keep it. One of our club members, A2 Lima, just bought a 6600. Fantastic radio. He's going to keep it forever. So I think, you know, and he bought it used. So that's certainly good. Okay,
Could
now.
we revisit the Elecraft just for a second?
Sure.
I agree with your statement. If you buy one, you're going to keep it because it's a fantastic radio. But don't you see the K3 radio starting to go down to your $1,200 range, getting there because of the
The
K4 and K3S? You know, you're starting to see people dump those radios off because they're looking at the K3 or K3S or the K4.
I think you're absolutely correct. And I haven't seen too many prices on K3s that I thought were worth buying and reselling. But I think that's going to happen. I definitely think that's going to happen. And the fact that you can take a K3 and send it into Elecraft and get it upgraded to a K3S, that is certainly an option, right? It's certainly an option. But then I don't know how much you're going to have in it when you get done.
You're going to have a fair amount. They're proud of their stuff.
Right. So I think even with the KX2s and the KX3s, I bought a couple KX2s. It's just hard to get, you know, when you pay $2,000 for a QRP rig, which is essentially what a KX3 is, by the time you buy this option board and that option board and this and this and the 2-meter module, that's a 10-watt radio that you just paid $10,000 for, or $2,000 for. And if you run it with an amp, like one of their amps or another one, I can almost see that working for you as a base station rig. But if you pay $2,000 for a KX3, you're going to have to sell it for $1,000, maybe $1,100, and
by the time you add those accessories that you're talking about to a KX3, you have basically a K3 or a K3S.
Absolutely.
And they're a wonderfully performing radio. I mean,
right. Or a 7610 maybe with a couple more a few $100 more, or something like that. So yeah, it's just I can't buy them and resell them, and I just caution you guys buying them in that if you really want that KX3 QRP rig with every option, I just wouldn't pay $1,800 for it. And that's what a lot of people end up paying used, and that to me it's not a good deal. Let's talk about older transceivers, because I love older transceivers. So some of them have tubes that glow in the dark, right? How many of you have tubes that glow in the dark? All right. Some of the older receivers are absolutely phenomenal. They're still as good as you can find today. Lots of knobs and buttons. So my Flex has no knobs and buttons, but the older radios, there's no menus, right? Everything's knobs, buttons, switches, and that's very cool. Full of history. I mean, how many people had grandparents that had a 520 or an FT101, or visited a Elmer that had racks of equipment? I mean, they're very cool, and we can talk about this older equipment forever. I think they're easier to work on. If you go to try to do a repair on the ICOM 7410, okay, and everything's surface mounted, and so my friend, my neighbor, N4SJW, his USB port failed on his 7410, and all he does is run digital. So he's got a problem, right? He doesn't even run any voice. Send it back to ICOM. They don't repair the main board. They replace the main board. $695. He loves the radio. He paid the money. I wouldn't have done it. But it takes special tools and special technique to fix all these newer radios. And all the big three have them. I'm sure Flex has all the equipment. L-Craft has all the equipment. But these are very easy to work on, even if you're not I'm not a, I don't do a lot of technical work on radios, but I can change out resistors that are this big and stuff like that, right? Because I can see those. I can't see the other stuff. Okay, and the other reason that I do like older transceivers is that there's some really good values out there. And I found a 520S, Kenwood TS520S the other day, and from all the pictures and the description, and it was a one-owner radio, and almost museum quality, and the guy was going to ship it to me for $295 from Connecticut. So I think there's some good values out there. We have a couple of club members have been trying to sell some 520s and 830s, and they just can't even sell them. Nobody wants to buy them. So I think if you, this is not what I would recommend for a new ham in any way, shape, or form. And I would encourage you as an Elmer not to ever push new hams towards hybrid radios or FT101s or whatever, because there are definitely issues with those. Okay, the cons of older radios: you will have to work on them. And you notice down here it says you will have to work on them. I think I put that twice in here because you will have to work on them. Okay, not all of them cover the expansion bands. So if you want to work the expansion bands, you can't do that with all the older radios. Parts are very limited. We talked about the Pro 3 and the display on the 570, but as you go back even further, 15, 20 years, the relays aren't available. Capacitors usually are, but the wafer switches and various things, you can't find them anymore, or you got to buy parts radios. You can't send a 520S back to Kenwood to have it repaired. They're not going to do it. And if that's important to you, then you need to keep that in mind. You will have to work on them often, or have somebody else do it for you. Anybody has Collins equipment? You got to align those things, right? You can get a great deal on my mind's gone blank, but Collins transceiver.
W0TLM.
Thank you. You can get a great deal on those nowadays, but you really need to probably send it somewhere and have it aligned if you don't have that skill set yourself. And so you're going to end up with a lot of money in that radio. And that may be okay if that's what that's what you want to do. You can't always easily interface these two computers. You can, but not always easily. They do not have USB ports. And then I see people all the time buying these old classics, and they pay more for them than you could buy an FT450 or an IC7100 or a Kenwood 590S. Now, if that's what your heart's set on, great, but just please don't push any new hams this direction, because it's not going to be a good experience for them. And let them get used to the hobby a little bit. And for you guys that just upgrade to general, stay away from the older radios, at least for a year. Get something you can get on the air with. You can just turn it on, flip the switch, and talk, or run your key. And then if you're really into the classics, give it a year and find you something really nice out there. Again, really good bargains if you want to go that way. Okay, where do you buy radios? Where do you sell radios? We'll talk about buying and selling kind of on the same slide here. Absolutely the best. First on my list is from a friend or a club member. okay? Friend or a club member. You can talk to the person on the radio. They're going to be straight with you. And if the ALC switch doesn't work, they're going to tell you it doesn't work, right? Whatever, or ALC knob, whatever it is. So from a friend or club member, that's your best choice always, in my opinion. From a ham referral, right? If Jim at HRO sells anything, buy it. That's my referral to you, okay? Because Jim has 80 rigs, and when he sells them, they're all like brand new, and they're usually about 25 or 30% less than market value. You guys know Jim at HRO? You should go and meet him. So that's a ham referral, and there's a lot of that going around. I think ham dealers that sell used equipment is probably not a bad place to go to purchase a radio, because they usually give you some type of warranty. And it may be as simple as take it home, hook it up, if there's something wrong with it, bring it back. It may be that simple. Or maybe a 30-day warranty. I keep thinking I'm blocking you, John. I'm going to keep it up here. I was told to stay within the camera view, so here I'm trying to stay in here. So I think that companies that do buy and sell used radios, great place to go. Main Trading Company. Does anybody do business with Main Trading Company? Okay. So you're at Dayton Hamvention, and Flex Radio has probably the biggest booth at Dayton. And they make it really easy for you to buy. They've got 3 or 4 people taking your credit cards there. And if you walk up to them and say, hey, I want a brand new 6400 with a Maestro, they're going to say, okay, it's this amount of money. Do you have a trade-in? And you think, okay, well, yeah, I've got several radios I might want to trade in. And there's a guy standing in the corner, literally, and he walks up and talks to you, and they take all your radios in on trade, and he gives you a very fair price. That gentleman is the owner of Main Trading Company, and he takes them all back to his shop in Texas, and if they check out, he pays pretty decent money for them, and that comes off the price of your Flex, and takes a week or two, and you get your new Flex in the mail, and your three radios that were in your shack previous are gone. Justin, right? So anyway, some companies do offer used equipment, and it's priced fairly, and they do offer a warranty. Online, QTH.com, EHAM, QRZ. I only do business on QTH.com. I don't do business anyplace else. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And I've bought and sold probably 25 radios on Craigslist. Now, you have to beware, right? I met a guy at the RTT parking garage over at Parker and Iliff one day.
Deep throat.
But it was a brand new in the box ICOM ID 3100 and or 31A, and I thought I overpaid at $50, but I got it. He was a nice guy. He bought it. He just didn't want to get involved in the amateur world, I guess. But anyway, Craigslist is actually a pretty good place for you to do some buying and selling. Just beware in terms of where you meet, and but usually they're local, so that's a good thing. But again, I just only use QTH.com. Okay, worst places to buy a transceiver, in my opinion, or any other amateur gear, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Hamfest, Swapfest. All right, I would never buy an HF rig at a Hamfest or a Swapfest, and certainly not at Dayton Hamvention. People bring equipment to Hamfest in a lot of cases when they have issues with it and they want to unload it. Okay, it's just the nature of the beast. Not every amateur is honest, and but some of them are. Some of them will tell you this radio has this problem, but I just don't personally buy any HF rigs at Hamfest or Swapfest. I've seen too many people get burned. Now, your mileage may vary. Jim from HRO always has a table at most of the Hamfest. I'll buy anything from Jim. I've bought a lot of stuff from Jim. So there are some exceptions, but you need to just beware. There are people there that are not going to tell you the whole story. It's just the nature of that marketplace. I never do business on eBay, although I did do business on eBay for a little while, And I think there's a bunch of people on eBay that are probably really sly and untrustworthy as well. If you do business on eBay, that's fine, but you'll see in one of my other slides, follow my suggestions to the letter, but eBay is not one of my favorite places to buy and sell equipment. Dayton Hamvention. I just don't go to Dayton. It's fun. It's a Xenia now. I'll tell you the story. I tell everybody the story. It's a true story. I'm buying an amp for a friend of mine. He wants a Heathkit amp, and he wants something really clean, and he knows that I can find it, and everything's at Dayton. So I walk up to this table, and there's a beautiful, beautiful Heathkit amp. It's exactly what we're looking for. And I said to the guy behind the table, I said, tell me a little bit about the amp. And he says, well, you're not going to believe this. He said, that amp was built by a guy that worked at Collins. He was just a fantastic kit builder. Everything that he built, and he built a lot of Heathkit stuff. He said it's all mint condition. He says, if I could take the cover off, I can't. He said, I don't want to do that. It's going to rain. But if I could, you'd see inside. This kit is built like nothing you've ever seen before. I said, great. Appreciate that information. And I didn't buy it because it was a little high. I went around the corner and I found another amp, and it was in equally as nice condition. It was really nice amp. And I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but the guy said, you're not going to believe this. He said, you're right. The guy that built this amp used to work at Collins. I said, I bet he was a really good kit builder and really knew what he was. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's just not a lot of people dating. They're just not very ethical. But I don't buy stuff at Dayton. I don't buy amateur radios at Dayton. There's other stuff I buy at Dayton, switches and all kinds of things. Fantastic flea market. Largest amateur radio flea market in the world, and this will be my 30th year. You need to go if you haven't gone. Okay, and then we have a couple people in our club in Parker that buy a lot of ham radio gear at the commercial flea market in Denver. I don't know the name of it. I think you need to beware buying stuff at commercial flea markets as well. And in a minute, you'll kind of understand why I say that. I typically don't buy anything from someone that's not a ham. And you're not going to find anybody at the commercial flea market in Denver that's selling amateur gear that's a ham radio operator. It's just not going to happen. Okay, those are, in my opinion, the worst places to buy a transceiver.
Garage sale.
Do what?
Do you have comments on garage sales?
Yeah, you skipped that one.
Garage sales, thank you. Yeah, I mean, one of my rules is that I always try to buy from the person that's owned the equipment. And I'd like to get a little history on it if possible. And when you go to a garage sale, who knows where it came from? Some the uncle, the cousin, it was in the house when they bought it. There's all kinds of ways that piece of equipment got in the neighborhood garage sale. I also don't do estate sales, but we'll talk about that in a minute. I've not had very good luck here, and probably because I haven't had very good luck, that's why I have it on the list. Okay. Good on time? Okay. My favorite online site, QTH.com. If you want to buy something, you want to sell something, that's the place to go right now. It's been on top of my list for about the last 5 years. It's very easy to use site. The site's very easy to use. It's a well-managed site. Everything works like it should. You can put your gear, if you're going to sell it, they have really good categories. So you can, if it's an antenna tuner, you can put it in the antenna tuner section. If it's an amp, you can put it in the amp section. If it's an HF rig, you can put it in the HF section. The pictures import seamlessly. If you ever had trouble importing pictures to whatever site, you won't have that problem with QTH.com. It's very easy. The picture gets uploaded the correct when you push the button, and it's always there. I've bought and sold more radios on QTH than any other site. I can't really explain it, but I think there's a little higher caliber of amateur radio operator on QTH.com. I'm not sure how to really explain that to you, but I just don't get as much. It's just a cleaner transaction. It seems like. And it seems like the people selling are a little different, a little higher quality seller. But I have used eHAM and I have used QRZ. I think the guy that owns and runs QRZ is kind of a jerk, but his site.
You don't like Fred?
but his site's good. I have no issues with him personally. It's just that it's what his phrase. He lives by the phrase "my way or the highway."
Yeah.
Yeah. So you make a little mistake in your ad, and he flames you and kicks you off. And anyway, but QRZ's fine, and eHAM is fine. Those are the three sites that I use. But QTH.com is definitely the best place to go buying or selling. Okay. These are Paul's rules. I've got 2 pages of them here, so we're just going to go through each one of them real quick. I never buy anything if I can't speak to the person on the phone. Personal phone conversation, if I can't do that, I don't buy nor do I sell to them. Okay? There's a lot that you can determine about the equipment, about the person, by talking to them on the phone. And if they won't talk to you on the phone, if they won't pick up the phone and call you, I walk every time. If it's a 7610 for $1,200, I walk. Well, it's probably why it's not a real 7610 for $1,200. But I never buy anything unless I can talk to the person on the phone. It is my #1 rule. I can break some of these other rules occasionally, but I've never, ever, ever broken that rule. I always check the seller's QRZ page. And I also Google their call sign. It's amazing what you can find when you Google somebody's call sign. Like the guy in New York that I was getting ready to send the cashier's check to, and there were 2 complete pages of how this guy screwed people over. Okay? Just by Googling his call sign. That's all I did. The QRZ page is really important because sometimes you take a look at the next one here, which is find a picture of their station if possible. A lot of times if you look at QRZ, you will not only see a picture of their station on their QRZ page, but you might even see that piece of equipment that's in their rack or sitting on their desk, right? And so I always check their QRZ page and I try to find a picture of their station if I can, because I bought a 7100 one time that the guy said was mint condition, and this and that and the other. Make a long story short, the microphone had more food in it than I had for lunch today. And I can see a picture of somebody's station, and I can pretty much tell whether they take care of their equipment by just how they have it organized and whether there's 30 cables everywhere or whatever. That doesn't necessarily mean that the person is selling a piece of garbage or whatever, but I like to see what their station looks like. And it also gives me the ability then when I talk to them to maybe bring their station up in conversation, right? If it's really who they say they are, then I might make a comment about their rotator control or whatever, and then they'll tell me a little bit about it. So, I want to be able to talk to the person that's actually selling the equipment. Okay. Always try to buy a radio as close to the original condition as possible. Okay? If there's scratches on it, dents, other cosmetic flaws, you should pay less for it. It's just the way it is. Okay? If you're selling a radio that has dents, scratches, marks across the display, expect to get less for it. Okay? That's just how it works. And since I'm reselling, if it has dents and scratches and cosmetic flaws, I'll buy it. But I just got to remember I got to buy it right, because I have to price it lower than if it was a mint condition radio. I always ask a ham radio related catch question. All right? Now, you can come up with your own question. I ask things like, when running digital modes, how do you set the ALC? If you're not a ham radio operator, are you going to be able to answer that question? If they say, well, I set it high, or I've never said it, whatever. Okay, and I've gotten those answers. What type of rig control software do you run? And a guy told me Microsoft. Okay, I don't think he was actually the guy selling the radio. Okay, I never buy radios that need work. Tech specials. That doesn't mean you shouldn't. But if you are going to buy a tech special, make sure you either know somebody that has all the equipment to work on it and fix it. Make sure you can do it yourself. Okay? Because if not, you're going to have a radio sitting on your shelf for several months. It's never going to work. You go to sell it, you can't get out of it what you paid for it. And when you finally do send it to somebody to get an estimate, it's twice as much as what you paid for the radio and $300 less than IC7100. So I see a lot of hams that do this. I see a lot of new hams, and hams have been in the hobby a long time. Pay way too much for tech specials. And if the person says, well, yeah, it is a 756 Pro 2, and yeah, the display is totally jacked up, but all you need to do is just call ICOM. They'll send you another display. No, ICOM doesn't have any displays. So if you buy a tech radio, just make sure you know what you're doing. Maybe you've had one, maybe you've worked on one before, but otherwise, don't point people to tech radios and don't buy them yourself. If you're going to sell one, my suggestion is that price it reasonably. All right? So if you have a FT450D that has a problem and you price it at $450, you're not going to sell the tech special. If you price it at $100, you probably will. And maybe there's a number in between those two that would work for you. But just, you have to price things at a point where someone can take a risk and get it working. Discuss payment options. I only work with PayPal and money orders, pretty much. I prefer PayPal. There's some safeguards for the seller and the buyer. It's quick. I get the money instantly. I ship the next day. I like PayPal. Some people don't use PayPal. Some people have been burned by PayPal. I've had them try to take money out of my account before. But for the most part, discuss that with the person that you're buying the radio from up front. Talk about it. Because if you go through all of these questions and discovery to find out that you got to pick it up in person in Florida, well, maybe you're going to Florida, but ask that question, how do I pay for it? I just use PayPal, money order. Typically don't do cash transactions, certainly not out of the general area. Discuss shipping cost. If you're going to buy a 7300 for $750, and that may be a pretty good deal right now, but if the person's in upper state New York, it's probably $50 to get it to Colorado, right? So now you have $800 in it. Is that a good deal? Well, not for me, but always discuss shipping costs, both if you're selling or buying. It's something you should have in the conversation. When is the seller going to ship the product, right? Now, I have another comment on that here on the next slide, but you need to have that conversation. I mean, I get it, not everybody is Gigaparts, and not everybody's DX Engineering that are going to, if you order, they're going to ship by 10 p.m. tonight. I can order it right now. I can order a 7300 right now, and they'll ship tonight, probably. But not everybody works that way. So you need to be flexible here, and you need to be reasonable, but it's not reasonable for you to buy something if they're going to ship it in 2 weeks. It's not reasonable for you to buy something that's going to ship in a week, and it's not reasonable for you to sell something that you tell the person on the other end you're not going to ship it for a week. You need to find a balance there. 2 to 3 days is probably acceptable. Okay, I always ask, and these by the way aren't necessarily in the order, but I always ask if the radio's ever been back to the manufacturer or another service facility. Okay, ask that question. Have you sent the radio? Have you sent the FT-DX3000 back to Yazoo? Okay. I think a lot of amateurs are very honest people, and if they did, they're going to tell you they did, and they may even have the receipt on the repair, right? And if they do, ask them for that. Make sure you get that with the sale. If you're buying a 590S, Kenwood TS 590S, they've all been back to Kenwood, right? For the ALC overshoot problem. So that doesn't deter me. It doesn't deter me if it has been sent back for repair. Unless they said they sent it back 5 times, right? I'm probably not going to buy that radio, okay? And I would suggest that you be honest with people if you're selling as well. If you send it back for repair, let people know that you've sent it back for repair. Okay. If the radio is from a smoking environment, if the person smokes cigarettes, cigars, whatever the case is, you will get 40% less for that radio if you sell it, and I expect to pay at least 40% below market value. It is very, very difficult to sell a radio that's been around smoke. Very, very difficult. And so always ask that question. I will guarantee you that you can do you can Google and do whatever trick you find on Google for getting rid of that cigarette smoke. It's not going to come out of the plastic. It's not going to come out of the boards inside. And right when you think that you've got it exactly where you want it, you turn the radio on, it all heats up, and boom, there it is again. So if you're a smoker and that doesn't bother you, that's fine. But just remember, when you go to sell it, you're going to get less. Just a fact of life. Does the seller have the original boxes? All the accessories that came with it, the data plug, the fuses, the manual, the schematic, everything that came with the radio. I will pay more every single time for a radio that has everything that came from the factory. Okay? If they don't have the box, don't have the manual, don't have this, don't have the mic. That's very common, by the way. They don't have the mic. I don't know, but they don't have the mic. Then I'm going to pay less, and you should expect to sell it for less if you're selling that radio. What accessories are included? You know, ask them that as well, because sometimes I had one here a couple months ago. The guy said, "Well, what accessories are included?" Well, I got a Heil headset I'll throw in, and I've got a Signal Link, and I got like 5 or 6 different boxes, all worth half the price of the radio, just by asking him. He wanted to get rid of the radio. None of those accessories worked with the new radio he was buying. It was a Flex, and so I got a great deal. I made a little bit on the HF rig, and I made a lot on the accessories. So ask that question, because a lot of times people want to get rid of that stuff. If you're selling something and you're having a little bit of difficult time getting the price you want, maybe add something to the pot, maybe a headset or headphone or whatever. Okay, is the seller the original owner? It's very important to me if I'm buying a radio and I'm buying it from the original owner. Why? Because I can get the history of that radio. I can talk to the person that bought it, and that had it on in their shack since the day it was new. I can get a lot more information if it's a third owner. That person's not going to be able to tell me how the radio performed originally, and they're probably not going to know how it performed or if there were any issues with the second owner. They can tell me how it performs for them and how it works, but so if I can buy from the original owner, I will always pay more. And if you're the original owner selling a radio that you bought in 1978 or 1998, you will get more for your radio because people like to buy from the original owner. Okay, with some exceptions, I don't buy estate equipment. Anything from an estate I don't buy because I typically can't talk to the original owner. I can't talk to the person that used the radio. I don't know the history of the radio. And I'll tell you, you go into an estate sale, and there was one here outside of Monument not this long ago, where a club had brought in, not your club, but a club had brought in a bunch of radios. Okay? And when you walked into this shack, you thought, man, this guy he was set. But none of it was his equipment, except for 1 or 2 boxes, right? So it kind of goes back to you're not talking to the original owner. You don't know how the equipment was used. And I just don't think with the way these estate companies work nowadays, they price things out very well anyway. But if you're working with an individual, maybe the estate sale is okay. If you're working with somebody that knows a little bit about the equipment, maybe it's okay. Are they open to a trade? Well, if you're selling a radio, maybe you're wanting to buy a Flex and you don't want to trade, but ask that question because who knows what they have in their closet. I bought a Kenwood, did I say I didn't deal in old radios? I bought a Kenwood TS520 that this mom had bought for her son, and they took it out of the box, plugged it in, turned it on with no antenna, put it back in the box, and it sat there for, what would that be, 35, 40 years? And so I asked them, you know, basically, do you have anything you want to trade? I was trying to negotiate a deal, and she says, well, I got this thing on the shelf, and this and that and the other, and I had some stuff. And anyway, I ended up getting this museum quality 520, and I traded some stuff that I really was having a lot of trouble selling, but it worked out for both of us really well. So ask that question if you're interested in that. Okay. If they don't put a picture in their ad, I don't contact them. In today's world, if you can't figure out how to put a picture in your ad, it's probably a fraud. Not always, but I just don't deal with it. Okay. If they don't put a price in their ad, I don't even call them. Right? You got to price the equipment. And I found more often than not when these two things happen, there's some funny business going on. They don't know enough about how to buy and sell radio equipment, and so they make those two mistakes. Don't be afraid to walk on the deal. If it's not what you want, the price isn't what you want, the shipping's too much, there's tons of stuff for sale. Tons of stuff for sale. You want to buy an IC7100? There's not one on QTH right now, but there will be next week. So you just wait. You'll find what you want. And again, kind of back to what we talked about before, always ask them, are there any issues with the radio? Do you have any problems? Have you noticed any issues? Are there any problems with the radio? Ask that question. And then I always ask, why are they selling? I'm interested to know, why are you selling? Occasionally I'll get an answer that just doesn't, it makes me wonder if this person's really a ham. I always ask that question, okay? If they say they're going to upgrade, what are you going to upgrade to? Get that conversation going, right? If they say, well, I'm going to buy a Microsoft, well, don't send them the money. Okay, just a couple more here. All right, so some final thoughts. Before you contact somebody on QTH.com or EHAM or QRZ, have a game plan. Okay? Write down a few of these things ahead of time. Because remember, you're going to talk to them on the phone, right? If you can't talk to them on the phone, don't do business with them. So write down a few of these things. Look them up on QRZ, find out where they live, find out how much your favorite shipper is going to cost to get that radio from Connecticut. Know that ahead of time. Okay, the more information you have before you start the negotiation, the better chance you're going to be able to come out on top of the deal. Have an upper limit. Don't overspend. If they want $850 for an IC7100 and it looks like it's in mint condition and it was only taken out of the box and used one time, and this and this, you can buy a brand new one for $850, right? So understand what your upper limit is going into the negotiation. And same way if you're selling the product, kind of understand, do some research, find out what you're likely to sell the radio for. Be flexible on the shipping date. Again, we're not Gigaparts or DX Engineering, so I try to ship the next day. And I do that about 95% of the time. So once I receive payment, I ship the next day. And that's why I like to use PayPal. But if somebody says they can't ship, they got to take their grandson to the ball game tomorrow, and then their wife's got a procedure on Wednesday, so I can't, they can't get it out till Thursday or Friday, and you're working the deal on Monday. I think that's reasonable, right? I think that's reasonable. It's not if you want the radio for a contest that weekend. But I think it's reasonable to be flexible. A lot of the people that are selling radios are just, they're not in the business like I'm in the business. And I can ship quickly because I've done it a lot, but most people can't. So don't hold that and don't prevent the sale from going through if they need a couple days. Okay, so I always get the question, how many times have I been burned, right? How many times have I got really ripped off? I've sold about 500 radios, and I can tell you probably these three are the ones that come to my mind. There's probably been a few more, but not that many. I do my homework, I get pictures, I talk to them on the phone, I do all the stuff I said, maybe a few other things you guys can think of that I don't do. And I got burned on a Flex 1500, I got burned on the 706 and ICOM 725. They were mint condition on the phone, but they weren't mint condition when I got them. Okay, so the 706 I threw in the dumpster at work, and the 725 I took to the shooting range. And the Flex 1500 is a really weird story. 6 months after I sent the money order, I got a check from USAA for 90% of the purchase price. Never did figure it out. The guy passed away actually, and his estate was trying to work through some stuff, and they found some emails that I had sent the guy, and we had made the deal. I'd sent him the money order. He went in the hospital. He never came out, and somebody made it right. But it was a lot of time and effort and whatever. I never, ever, ever buy or sell radios to ship overseas. Too many scams, and I would suggest you not do it either. If you put a radio on QTH for sale, you're going to sell something, you're going to start getting emails from people in Finland and the UK and Australia and everywhere. Don't do it. Don't do it. A lot of people I know are in this business and they've never had a really good, successful international transaction. Your mileage may vary, but that's my rule. I never do business in Canada. And that goes back to my eBay days. And Canadian customs are very, very unpredictable. And they might get the radio that they bought from me in 3 days or 3 months. And believe me, there's a lot of in between and stuff that happens, and I just don't do business in Canada. Again, your mileage may vary. Okay, money order 101. You go give the cash to the post office, they give you a money order, you put it in the mail, it's gone, right? It's gone. You're never getting that money back. It's not going to happen. Some people say, well, you know, this. No, it's gone, okay? So I do about 30 or 40% of my business with money orders. The ham selling the product will not sell the product unless I send him or her a money order. So I have a limit. If it's $750 or less, and the person insists on a money order, and I've done my due diligence, I'll do the deal, and I've never gotten burned. But I'm not going to put more of my money at risk. Okay, so I'm not going to buy a 7610 for $2,300 or $2,000, whatever, using money order transaction. Not going to do it. So there are a lot of hams that are, and I can say this because I'm 60, but that are a little bit old-fashioned in the way that they want to do business. And they're not going to do PayPal, and they're not going to do cashier's checks because they believe that that's a scam as well. All they're going to do is USPS money orders. It's fine, but do your due diligence first. Make sure you know who you're selling to or buying from. PayPal personal limits. I just don't. I'm really not into buying 6,600 flexes for $5,000 and $6,000. So my limit's about $2,000 on anything that I buy. Wire transfers, cashier's checks, cash if it's local. I will do those things if the party is interested in doing that. I've never had any trouble with wire transfers. A couple of them that I've done in the last 6 months, they were a U.S. bank customer. I was a U.S. bank customer. I was able to do some, wire transfers are not evil. And you could use those for buying or selling. Cashier's checks from banks, I don't have a problem with those either if you're due diligence there as well. Okay, so I like buying and selling radios. So if you're interested in one, let me know. I'll see if I can find you one. Sell it to you at cost. But it is a lot of fun, and I have been able to pay my way to Dayton on numerous years by doing this. I have kind of backed out of the business a little bit just because it's time consuming, as you can see. You don't buy radios based on for resale based on I think I'm going to buy one this week. You buy them based on when you find a good deal, and sometimes that's 6 in 1 week. So you got a lot of equipment coming in, and you got to get it out, because I don't like to hold on to anything for more than a few days, week at the outside. So it takes a lot of time, and I'm kind of shifting other things and not spending quite as much time doing this anymore. Okay, well, that's the presentation. Questions? John?
So what about when you receive a radio, what do you do in the way of testing it to check it out?
Yeah, great question. I try to test every function on the radio. Okay, I put it on the outside antenna. I try to make a contact with another station. It may be my neighbor next door. It may be somebody in Texas, whatever the case is. I test every band. Check the receiver on every band. Check the transmitter on every band. I check the output power on every band. And I look for flaws. I look for switches that don't flip and knobs that don't turn correctly, and things that maybe have been modified on the radio that the seller didn't tell me about. And then I try to represent it the best I can, so that if there is something that I found that is an issue, I put it in the ad. And I had I don't know why I keep going back to ICOM 7100, but I had an ICOM 7100 I bought to resell that had a bad USB port on it. And I bought it, got a great deal on it, put it in the ad. USB doesn't work. Sold to a guy. He was so happy to get it. He said he didn't do digital. He's never going to hook it up to his computer. He wants it for his car. And so I bought it really, really inexpensively. I think I paid $450 for it, and I think I sold it for $550 or $575. So I don't. Most transactions, the minimum profit I'm looking at is around $50 all in. Profit and up to $250 to $300, $400, $500, depending on what the radio is. But I test every one of them. To answer your question. Other questions?
So are you just flipping these radios, or are you doing something to them to?
No, I'm just flipping them.
Just flipping them. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just flipping them. Yeah, maybe it's good luck. Maybe it's just the due diligence I do before I buy them. But I've not really had very many issues with any of the radios that I buy. People seem to represent them fairly and honestly, and yeah. So I just flip them, get them, test them out, put them back on the site. Other questions?
Do you have a list of your inventory at any given time, or do you have to find individual ads on QT?
You do. Just I typically have nothing in stock. I buy it, flip it within a day or two. So I don't have inventory. Yeah, and I usually I may buy it on QTH.com. I may resell it on QTH.com the same day, or QRZ or EHAM, but usually QTH.com. Yeah.
So when you're on one of these sites searching for something to buy, do you do a search for something, like type in a search window?
Oh, that's a great question.
Or for something?
Yeah. So I keep QTH.com up at work. And most of the better deals that I've made, I've bought within 10 minutes of them hitting the site. So you look for various things, various ways people describe the radio. If they talk about the fact that they're getting out of the hobby is a really, really good opportunity for a reseller. You look at the ad, and you try to contact them with via email through the QTH site within 5 to 10 minutes of when it hits the site. The quicker you can get to them, and if you're the first person to contact them, you have a much better chance of making the deal. If you find something in the evening that was put on there at 10 a.m. and it was priced right, chances are it's already sold. It's gone. And you usually know that because the person never returns your email and that type of thing. So
Yeah, there's a pretty good indicator from my personal experience on QRZ, for example. If it's on there for 3 days, it's overpriced.
right.
So you have to, if you're looking for something, you gotta stay on top of your search.
Yeah, no,
Stuff moves very quickly.
there's another comment about that I'll make. I do look for radios that have been on QRZ or EHAM or QTH for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, sometimes a month or 2 months, because they were overpriced originally. 2 weeks later, they're still overpriced. 2 weeks after that, they're still overpriced. But some of these people are never going to lower their price on the Elecraft K3. It's still $1,800. 6 months later, it's going to be $1,800 or whatever. Okay, but then some people are very, very interested in selling that radio, and especially right before Dayton is a great time to buy. I buy a lot of stuff before Dayton because people are trying to sell it to get cash to go to Dayton Hamvention and spend their cash on something else. Sometimes around Christmas, before Christmas is a really good time to buy. Sometimes after Christmas is a good time to buy. Before and after Dayton Hamvention are really, really good. And the middle of the summer is always good, especially if you see something that's been on there for 3 weeks. They may not have gotten any response, or a couple, people are on vacation, they're doing things with their kids. They might have gotten a couple stray requests about, when did you buy it, how did it work, why are you selling, that kind of thing. But if it's been on there for 3 weeks and it's priced reasonably, that's another indicator of what I look for. Is people just haven't been looking at the ad. So there's all those kinds of things that you kind of look for. But and then there are the radios that have been on there. Well, there's an antenna tuner, Palstar 4AT, 4K. What's their 2,500 watt antenna tuner? The manual tuner. It's a 4 something. Anyway, guy in New York was selling it. It was on QTH for 6 months. 6 months, and he wanted within $50 to $100 of a new tuner. And I don't really buy tuners, but I just kept bugging me that every week it was on there. And I got a hold of the guy and I said, what's the deal? He goes, well, man, I want to sell that thing. I said, well, you don't have it priced like you want to sell it. And I made him this ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous offer, because I don't buy tuners. And I made him this ridiculous offer, and I got it.
Ridiculous to you, or it's ridiculous to him?
Well, the tuner was probably worth $550 to $600, and I paid $250 for it. So, and it was a 2,500 watt, represented as new in the box, and it was. So I'm not afraid to make offers. Now, sometimes I get hung up on. Sometimes people tell me, go to wherever. They say, oh, well, we know what the first letter in your call sign stands for. I've had people, say that. But the thing about it is that some people are never going to budge on their price, but other people, sooner or later, they want to move that. They want to move that off their desk. Or their brother gave it to them to sell, and it's been sitting there, in the closet for 6 months. So those are the type of deals I look for, right? I made a deal on a Flex. We have any Flex users here? 6300. You know what a 6300 is? Like not one generation removed, but I paid $800 for one. that was absolutely mint. Good deal or not? Okay, I thought so. Yeah. So those are the kind of deals that I'm looking for. I bought several ICOM 7300s. Who has a 7300? There's usually a bunch of people in the audience that do. Okay. I bought several for between $600 and $650. So, you know, I have some room to make some money on that. So
what do you use for determining what you're gonna sell it for?
yeah, that's a good question. You can do a search on qth.com or QRZ. You can look what everybody else is asking. And over time, you kind of get a feel for what that radio is worth on the open market.
Okay.
You know, like, for instance, 7300s are selling for between $8 and $850 right now, right? New, they're what, $950 after the rebate, something like that? So $850 is what they're selling at their asking price. So if I can buy them at $7 to $750, I've got room for some profit. But I just search all the sites and I see what people are asking. Even eBay, sometimes I'll go on there and run a search on there. eBay's not a good source, but I certainly look there occasionally, and especially if it's a radio I don't deal in on a regular basis. What would that be? I don't buy a lot of Kenwood 590Ss and 590SGs, but I do know, and part of the reason is because they hold their value really well, and they're it's hard to buy them and make any money off of them. But I know that if I can get an SG for $650 or $700, I can do pretty well with it. So
basically, you take a look at the sites that you're gonna sell on.
yes, and sometimes I'll call people. I'll email them. Can I give you a call? And I'll ask some questions about the radio and try to get a feel for why they priced it at that. Because I don't know. You know, I see a price that's kind of a flyer one way or another, too high, too low. I kind of want to know what the reasoning is behind that. Because sometimes if it's really, really, really low, they didn't put it in the ad, but there's something wrong with it. You know, and if it's really, really high, they just don't know what the radio's worth.
There's no Kelly Blue Book.
There's no
Blue Book
No.
for radio prices.
No.
Well, right, yeah,
No.
okay.
There's just not.
You can certainly look on eBay and see what things are selling on there, you know, a range, that kind of thing.
You can. The trouble with eBay is there's just a lot of commercial sellers on there, and you can look at the completed listing price. It's usually all over the board, and I don't know. I don't have a really good comfort level doing business on eBay anymore because of that. I just can't get a good feel for. And there's been some people on there that have just been absolute crooks.
I've sold a lot of camera gear on eBay, and,
Yeah.
and it has its pluses and minuses, but I've been
Yeah.
very successful with it.
If it's difficult for me, if it takes too much time, which is the other reason eBay tends to take more time for me, and I just don't do that. I just can't do that.
Do you buy from club members, like your club or this club?
Well, I sell to club members. I don't buy too much from club members, but I sell to some club members. And I typically, my rule was I never sold to club members or people that I know, because I do check the radios out, John. But I can't, you know, I can't check every single thing and run it at, you know, on FT8 at 100 watts for 30 minutes. You know, I'm not that thorough. I sold a 991 to Ray in 0 KEG. And then the week after I sold it, the antenna tuner failed. And so I got it from him, sent it back to Yazoo, and I was just going to pay for it. He didn't want me to do that, but I was going to. And they sent it back, and 3 weeks later, antenna tuner failed again. And then it went back to Yazoo again. No, the shipping's starting to add up, not on the shipping back, but out there, right? And he got it back, and something else failed. And finally, I gave him, I think on that one, I just gave him his money back. And, you know, sent it back to Yazoo again, and got it back. Put it on in my shack for several months. It worked fine. There was no issues. They tried to fix the problem the first 2 times. The third time they just replaced the board, and it was fine. So I don't I mean, I typically will sell to somebody I know, but I have a little bit of an uneasy feeling sometimes because I just feel bad if something is sold as is. They know that, I know it, but
You know where you live.
yeah. Well, and I'm gonna do the right thing with a club member. I'm gonna take it back. So, you know, it is what it is, but any other questions? Yes,
Do these, like QTH, do they charge to list?
No.
Buy and sell? They don't.
they do not. They do not. And they have a couple little safeguards for sellers and I feel like there's just a higher caliber of buyer and seller on that site. And I don't know really how to clearly articulate that. But I think there's some riffraff on QRZ, not based on the comments I made about the owner. But I think there's some riffraff on there. I just don't have those kind of issues on QTH. I've had a couple of conversations with people I've sold stuff to on QTH that have lasted over an hour. Not that I really have time to talk to somebody for an hour, but they were doing their due diligence, right? And they were asking me all about the radio. Where did I get it? Did I test it out? And then I always get the question, will I meet them on a SCAD and test it online? Sure, I know. But propagation doesn't always work to southern Florida. So, you know, it's not really practical. But a lot of people ask that. A lot of people want to hear the radio on the air. And it's just not practical. It is at the top of the sunspot cycle, maybe, but it's not right now. So, okay. And I do want to extend an offer to your club. We do Winter Field Day in January, the Parker Radio Association does. And more than happy to partner with you guys. We're going to get a site lined out here pretty quick, and we have a really good time. We go out with QRP rigs and set up some antennas. And we also just got back from Signal Butte. We did a QRP expedition to one of the little peaks out in Teller County, and I'll start forwarding those invites to you, Greg, whoever, because we certainly would be, if you guys want to come along, tag along in any of those events that we do. We do several scouting events every year, field day, some races, QRP events, and some other events as well. And the more the merrier. You're always welcome to tag along. So,
Well, thank you, Paul.
all right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.